Prot Warrior still reigns supreme in the meta even after the nerfs leading up to 8.2. The tankiness, the sheer effectiveness at which Prot Warrior takes the damage to the face is still hard to beat even with the recent uprising of Brewmaster monks. So stay tuned, because in today's video we will go over all of the basics when it comes to talents, gear, essences, rotation, and a lot more things for you to know going into dungeons and raids that you shouldn't miss. And before starting all of this off, make sure and do us a favor by clicking that little bell notification thingy, because, well, you get our stuff a lot quicker in your inbox/feed, but more importantly, it tells YouTube that our channel is the shit. And being the shit is the most important thing in the world, quickly after world peace and double-layered toilet paper. Starting with the first row, you will take Into the Fray. The purpose of the talent is simple: haste. Haste is the cornerstone when it comes to the functionality of Protection Warrior. Haste contributes to faster cooldowns and more rage generation, topics we will develop a little later in the video. On the second row, you want Crackling Thunder as the general best option for all situations. This increases the range of your thunderclap, and at first glance, its uses is just for AoE. That's because it is. The increase in radius gives you more range as well, which is always good at gathering adds or simply doing damage in dungeons to keep aggro. The alternatives are niche and can be useful as well. Bounding Stride is good if you know you will be tanking the boss solo, and Safeguard requires you to know exactly when to use it, who to use it on, and what exactly you will be soaking for that person. All of these are viable in their respective situations, but to begin with, I will recommend Crackling Thunder. Third row, even after 2 nerfs, Unstoppable Force is still the best option. It makes your Thunderclap one of your biggest damage sources in the game, especially in AoE. Don't be fooled by the nerfs. Due to the nature of the essences, your avatar will be more frequent, giving you more Thunderclaps throughout the encounter, and in turn increasing the value of anything that ends up buffing Thunderclap. Fourth row gives you Bolster as the best defensive option. Yes, defensive, since the entire row focuses on this, but Bolster is incredible. Not only does it reduce the cooldown of Last Stand, but it also makes it able to block attacks, meaning you can use it simply when you don't have shield block up, or if you know an intense melee phase will start and you want to solve all of it with one button. Level 75 brings 2 choices to the table, and the one you pick generally has to do with your group's composition. Stormbolt gives you an extra single target stun that can be used on dangerous mobs, ones that you cannot interrupt or ones that you want to stop from attacking, to either drop certain debuffs or to reduce the pressure they put on your group. I would recommend you take Stormbolt always until you get comfortable enough where you see the value of the other options. One alternative is Rumbling Earth. This does not add another CC, but in turn reduces the cooldown of your shockwave when you hit 3 or more enemies with it. Usually you want this when your group does not have enough AoE stuns as often as you need them. Level 90, go with Booming Voice. The talent makes your demo shout generate a good chunk of emergency rage and debuff the enemies to take increased damage. Even so, you want to use this whenever available, since the rage generation overall is the best in giving you options to deal with situations. Not to mention, it will work wonders with the next talent row. When you're super geared and aimed at increasing boss damage, Devastator is an option, but that implies changing Azurite gear and a lot more knowledge and comfort on the spec, which I do not recommend for first-time pro players. And the last row, Anger Management, will round up the builds we will be discussing, at least from the perspective of the talents. The strength of this is not apparent at first glance. The cooldown reduction is indeed very good, but how much cooldown reduction are we talking about? Well, you did pick Booming Voice, giving you a burst of rage, to be exact a 4-second cooldown reduction once you spend that rage. You also took Into the Fray on the first row that increases rage generation since you attack faster. All of these, plus more to come, factor into you getting really fast defensives and offensive cooldowns, which, in my opinion, is what makes Prot Warrior an alpha tank. And all of these are just one way of tackling the Prot Warrior. There are talent changes and more swaps when it comes to gear as well, that can make you specialize in certain encounters, offering the spec a lot of versatility most other tanks do not have. For this video, however, we will be using this specific builds, especially when recommending gear and rotation examples. And we cannot talk about gear without talking about the stats. Tank stats are not something you can sim. You can test, however, theorycraft and experiment with to give you a better understanding about what is good and what is not. The Skyhold Warrior community has done an awesome job theorycrafting a lot of the information we will be talking about, so let's dive in. The most important thing to know is eye level is king. Strength might not be the best stat in a vacuum, but eye level is more than just extra strength. It's stamina, strength, and a larger pool of secondary stats, of which all are good. There is no bad stat for a Prot Warrior, but some offer more than others. The one that offers the most is haste, followed by versatility and then mastery, with crit having a smaller importance but never enough to be ignored. Haste increases your attack speed, meaning that you get more rage since you swing more often at the enemy. Haste also reduces the cooldown of pretty much all the important abilities you will cast throughout the fight. And if you look at an even larger picture, you get this. More rage and more abilities casted will end up being more rage spent with anger management and faster defensive cooldowns. It all ties nicely, wouldn't you say? Versatility is a solid secondary stat that increases the damage you do and the damage you negate. It also feeds well into pretty much all the tank trinkets and essences and ignore pain, which is an important defensive. All of these contribute to magic mitigation as well, since there's little in the ways of mitigating magic damage outside your spell reflect, of which use is situational and conditional. Mastery is a strong block stat. Block is one of the strongest ways to mitigate damage in the game. If you look at the tank logs on difficult fights and dungeons, you will see that in normal circumstances, over 90% of the damage is physical, where a very large portion of it is blockable. Mastery increases the passive chance you have to block and the attack power you have, meaning more damage. Crit gives you more damage and strength gives you more armor, and both contribute to your total parry chance, which is not crucial or something you can rely on, but the mitigation it provides will add up in the long run. As you can see, all stats have an important role to play. You just need to understand what that role is, and you can build your own Prot Warrior the way you see fit. Not to mention, this lets you decide between stat-stick items, be it rings or simple trinkets. And speaking of trinkets, there are a few you will actually want to get. Some of the best performing ones can be found in the raids, and hopefully you are raiding on your Prot Boy. Bloodthirsty Urchin seems to provide one of the best defensive options in terms of trinkets for high-end tanks, especially those that favor versatility, and you do, even if it's your second best stat. Versatility contributes to your defensives, as I mentioned earlier, and makes your trinkets, such as this, scale higher and higher, and seeing how Prot Warriors have no ways of self-sustain during a fight, this baby will be amazing for you. Another option that drops from Eternal Palace is Edict of the Faithless, also scaling with versatility. This one provides absorption shields for physical damage, of which we just learned there is a lot of. And lastly, from Mythics, since not everyone raids, you can get stat trinkets like Rizan's Gleaming Eye, which has been a best-in-slot for Prot Warriors for almost a year now. When it comes to traits and more, Prot Warriors have multiple variations and combinations you can aim for. Some of these factor in the strength of the traits, others your own capability of balancing survival and damage output. As a general rule in our guides, we will recommend things that will make you tanky and able to survive long enough for you to get more experience as a Prot Warrior, at which point you can make your own decisions if you want to switch things around and take a more offensive approach. As such, the best defensive trait so far, that will offer tremendous offensive power as well, is Bastion of Might, of which you want 3 stacked. The only part that stacks is the Mastery bit, and we already know how good Mastery is. Considering how often you can pop avatars, this trait is far stronger than it would initially seem. After this, one trait that is absolutely mandatory for this build is Deafening Crash. The damage added is okayish, but the good part is in the fact that it extends Demo Shout. Paired up with the booming voice talent, you should start to see how these two can be amazing together. In dungeons, certain warriors can even stack this for the damage, but you would be losing a lot of defensive power that way. These two are what make Prot Warrior what it is today, but there are still a few you can aim for that are solid choices, and I will list them in their perceived order of strength in terms of survivability provided. Meticulous scheming is a generic trait and one of the strongest. It might be a bit hard to get since it's not very common. Among the 5 different chess pieces I have, 0 of them have this trait. But if you can get it without sacrificing the above mentioned, then you should go for it. Iron Fortress, Brace for Impact and Bloodsport are also solid main traits that can be stacked in the lack of better options. Each has a specific way in which it adds to your kit, so I would recommend testing them if you plan to stack them before deciding if you'll be sticking with your choice. For secondary and defensive traits, Overwhelming Power stands for itself. Unstable Flames is also very solid since it provides a very large amount of crit for an inner trait. As for defensives, Resounding Protection will be one of the best, but feel free to test out what you have as well. In keeping with the same logic in terms of builds, the main essence you want in your major will be Vision of Perfection. This not only reduces the cooldown of your avatar even further, but makes it so it procs randomly during a fight for even more avatars. No, really, you'll have more avatars than rejections from cute girls at that one bar you keep going to. Seriously, why do you still go there? As for secondary options, you want these at rank 3 ideally and swap them depending on what you want to mitigate. Nullification Dynamo is one of the strongest tools against magic damage, of which raids have plenty of. Aegis of the Deep is just more versatility that mitigates everything, same as Conflict and Strife. Or if you don't mind running Battlegrounds, Sphere of Suppression is a big haste boost, and I bet you can find the use for the movement slow you apply to melee attackers as well. Before moving on to the rotation, check our stream at twitch.tv/MarcelianOnline. We play different specs and test out different builds that don't usually make it into the guide, so come on down and maybe you'll see your favorite spec in action, or, you know, just some good old-fashioned wow. Why is Prot Warrior so good? Well, to be honest, block plays no small part in this. Blocking an attack means reducing the damage it deals by a significant amount based on your gear. You can even critically block, reducing it by double that amount. You have a passive chance to block normally and a 100% chance to block attacks that can be blocked once you pop Shield Block, or Last Stand since we took the Bolster talent. When Shield Block is not available, Last Stand is your go-to. Not to mention you get a boost to your HP for its duration. Shield Wall is the quintessential defensive cooldown, 40% damage reduction for 8 seconds. Simple, elegant, reliable. Spell Reflect gives you 20% magic damage reduction for 5 seconds, or it reflects one spell casted your way back at the attacker. Once the spell is reflected, if it can be reflected, the buff goes away. So usually you will use this to benefit from one of its 2 effects and can help you in certain situations like the indigestion mechanic from Underot's second boss. Demoralizing Shout debuffs the target, reducing their damage done to you by 20% on top of what Booming Voice adds to the table. All of these abilities are what makes Prot so good at getting smashed in the face, and the better you optimize them and rotate them during your raid and dungeon, the better you will be at taking punches to the noggin. One of the general openers for Prot that will give you a very good margin of safety goes like this. Cast Avatar 1 second before engaging. Intercept and cast Taunt midway. Use Shield Block first. Shield Slam next. Demo Shout. Thunderclap, then proceed with a single target priority. The reason you taunt mid-intercept is because certain specs can deal incredible burst damage, and intercept on its own is not enough to generate threat. If by the time you get to the point where you shield slam, someone else got the aggro, then the boss starts running into your DPS and healer line, and you don't want that. Shield Block at the start is essential because you have almost no rage, no procs, and the minimum amount of buffs to help against those first few swings that can chunk you real hard. Trust me, until you heal a tank that starts its opener doing damage instead of mitigating, you won't know how bad it is to take 3 hits to the face naked with no mitigation. When you're in your normal rotation, the priority you want to put on your spells follows this order: Avatar first, on cooldown, Demo Shout next, Shield Slam after, Thunderclap next, Revenge only when it procs for no rage cost, and Devastate as filler, with these last 3 spells able to reset the cooldown on Shield Slam, so be ready for that when it happens. When in AoE, maintaining aggro is more important since it has a chance of failing as opposed to single target fights. To make sure that doesn't happen, keep this priority in mind. Thunderclap is numero uno again. Revenge next regardless of procs, Shield Slam after, Devastate as filler. Here you will need to make decisions. The biggest one is, are you using Rage for Revenge, aka damage, aka aggro? Or are you using it for ignored pains, aka survivability? A smart person once said, there's no point in making you tankier if in the process you lose aggro and your 0 tanky group members take the full wrath of the mobs, making the healer heal for even more. And you know who said this? RN Jesus, and his wisdom is vast. For the consumables, you will aim at getting haste as much as possible since the stat has no real cap. If at any point you find yourself too squishy or your life spikes too much, consider replacing them with their versatility equivalents. Go for a Cord of Haste for your ring enchants and Quicksand Spinels as your gem of choice for socket needs. On the weapon, go with Force Multiplier, which should always give you haste. No matter how you gear yourself, if you do it properly, haste should be the biggest stat anyway. Get the Greater Flask of the Undertow and the Superior Battle Potion of Strength for the overall most utility, and as for the food, feasts and baked potatoes will be your food of choice, depending on the content you will be doing. All of the details included in the video have been made in collaboration with the Skyhole Discord channel and with the theory crafting and feedback of Mwahi and the compiled information of Marok. Sorry if I mispronounced your name, guys. If you want to get in touch with mythic Prot Warriors and get their advanced tips and advice, I would strongly recommend you check the links in the description to the Warrior Community Discord channel. Thanks for all the help and effort you guys put out there. And a special thanks to our patrons. Listen, I'm gonna be real with you guys. These videos take a lot of work to do, and honestly, with your support, all of this is a lot easier to do. So for that, thank you, and we appreciate it. And if you feel a little bit more generous, check the details down below the video. You'll find our Patreon link right there with a couple of goodies in store. Don't forget, we have a lot of 8.2 guides for a lot of the specs in the game, your favorite included. Unless it's Arcane Mage.
What the hell is an Arcane Mage?
Thank you very much for watching the video and have an awesome day.